Welcome along, good evening. So, yesterday we had this.
I'm now going to sentence Axel Rudakubana, having explained my reasons. On counts 1 to 3 murder, I sentence him to custody for life, with a minimum term which he must serve in custody of 52 years.
Rudakubana being sentenced there for the Southport massacre. Then this happened. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch called for a change in the law to allow under-18s to face a whole-life tariff. And then today we had this.
The technicality of the whole-life sentences, I think it's important to know that the last government did reduce it to 18 in line with international law after the Manchester Arena bombings, and that still stands. There are a range of other aspects of law, of agencies who have failed in this case to step in.
OK, so it's the United Nations, is it? Is that what it is? It's their fault, the United Nations? OK, well, that is strange, because then also today, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, appeared to suggest that any current plans to change the law wouldn't exist. So no current plans to change the law on whole-life orders for under-18s. Right, so that, to me, looks a little bit like a domestic decision, doesn't it? Because the Prime Minister appears unwilling to ever deviate from international law. The Defence Secretary did, however, decline to rule out changing the law, said that the Prime Minister has made it clear that nothing is off the table. It's also worth noting that both the judges and government's position is that Rudakubana is very unlikely to ever be released from prison. But one father of one of the victims reportedly said Axel Rudakubana should rot in jail. So I think it would be interesting to see if they would have preferred the monster who was just a few days away from his 18th birthday was given a whole life tariff. Maybe Starmer could take that into consideration. Hey, look, after all, he released this statement yesterday. He said that what happened in Southport was an atrocity. It was one of the most harrowing moments in our country's history. He said he stands with the families. Well, it's a good statement. Some may say it's slightly undermined by the fact that he attended a drinks party with celebrities at Downing Street shortly after laying a wreath for the Southport victims. But I'm sure it was simply a pre-arranged drinks event, Prime Minister. Surely it was. And, hey, he's got to juggle various commitments. But I think we should have a conversation as a country now about whether people under the age of 18 should be given whole-life orders. The Bolger killers are prime candidates. John Venables was sent back to prison for child porn, for example. And why was he ever let out? Britain's youngest female double murderer, Lorraine Thorpe, was 15 when she killed her father and another woman. Can she ever be rehabilitated? She didn't just kill Rosalind Hunt, she tortured her and found violence funny. There's loads of these people. Are we too soft? I mean, Starmer wanted 16-year-olds to vote, didn't he?
We want to see 16 and 17-year-olds voting. They can go out and work. They can serve in our armed forces. And, of course, if they are out and working, they pay tax. And therefore they should have a say over how the money they're paying in is being used. So, yes, I want to see that vote for 16 and 17-year-olds.
So, why shouldn't 15, 16 or 17-year-olds face a full life order for the very worst crimes?
Us blokes hate talking about a little thinning up top, and many of us settle with that balding look, but that wasn't for me, and that's why I went to Elite Hair, the world's leading hair loss clinic, and now I've had over 4,000 new hairs added to this barnet, and very soon I'm going to be rocking some brand new flowing locks. And you can too! So how does it work? Step 1, I sent the team a set of photos of my head. Step 2, I then spoke to one of the Elite Hair staff who looked through my photo submissions and worked out a treatment plan for me. Step 3, Elite Hair then organised accommodation and the treatment. I was at their state-of-the-art treatment centre in Istanbul, and their incredibly kind staff took me through the process, and before I knew it, I was in surgery. Elite Hair and their leading medical experts have specialised in pain-free treatments using the sleep deep method, and they really mean that. I felt incredibly relaxed the whole time, and I haven't felt any pain since. Check out Elite Hair using the link in the description. When you do, Elite Hair will provide you with a free personalised hair analysis. Then you'll join over 100,000 happy patients. Hit that link and start your hair growth journey like I did today.
Let's go towards my panel this evening. We are, of course, joined by the Director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe. We've got political consultant, Suzanne Evans, and broadcaster and columnist, JJ Adasobi. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Stephen, I'll start with you then. Should under-18s, especially if they're a few days away from their 18th birthday, be given a whole life order if they commit the most awful crimes?
I'm not actually going to do what most people think I would normally say, which is the answer is yes. I am a barrister. I've been involved in criminal law when I was training before I got into the city. I understand it. My personal view on this is that it should be based on the evidence and circumstances of the case. I think there should be an opportunity for the judge to have discretion. So I don't think it should be an automatically element that's placed in law, so that you have to give them. After 18, I'm quite content with that. But I think just that in those circumstances, and I do believe that if you were in this case, which I know you know and everybody else in this panel, we've all been devastated by it since the moment it's occurred. I still feel this week I've not been myself about it at all. I've just, because I've got an 11-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
I think all of us right-minded people, the instinct would be that this man should never leave, but I do believe the judge should have had the discretion to be able to do so. And in these circumstances, I think he would have done. He would have done.
Suzanne, your views. Let's deal with this case, Anne. I mean, I don't think that this guy can ever be rehabilitated, can he? No. I think there's quite a few like him as well. The Bolger killers were a lot younger, so there is that argument there. I mean, I would have quite liked to never see them let out, and indeed in the case of one of them who was sent back for child porn, etc., you think, well, that was right, wasn't it? We shouldn't have let him out. But in this case, what do you think? Whole life order?
I think in this case it was 9 days away from his 18th birthday. I think there's a very strong case to be made for exactly as Stephen has just said, that the judge can have discretion. But, you know, somewhere there's got to be a cut-off line between who we consider to be a child and who we consider to be an adult. And that's got to be something that is in every civilised society. Now, Keir Starmer, yeah, if he wants votes for 16-year-olds, then yes, absolutely. He accepts that they are adults and have responsibility. And yes, of course, in which case it should be reduced. There's absolutely no doubt about this. But I remember, Patrick, you and I had the discussion about children and responsibility and crime when we were talking about the kids that had got caught up in the Southport riots. And, you know, I think we expressed concern that children in that instance were being put behind bars and heavily sanctioned, despite the fact they'd obviously got caught up in something of the moment and probably influenced by adults as well. This case, however, I think is very, very different. And I've heard so many people say, just 9 days. Just 9 days between absolutely making sure this violent, evil creature is locked up forever, and a lenient parole board that might just, if he pleads whatever, let him out.
If the law was 16 is classed as an adult, and it was 9 days off his 16th birthday, we'd still be saying the same. Unfortunately, with law, there has to be a cut-off.
It does.
Countries like the UAE, they go by the letter of the law. So whether you're 1 day before being an adult or not, that's how it is. So I think it should be reduced to 16. The law should change. Right. That won't affect him because this case is already going to have passed. But going forward, when I was 16, I was able to pay tax and work. I was able to also join the army. So if I'm old enough to join the army, I'm old enough to then go to jail for the rest of my life.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I'm sorry, but, you know, we have footballers making their Premier League debuts. You could play for England at football at that age. I mean, if you're old enough, deemed old enough
to get married, remember, until very recently.
Yeah, if you're deemed old enough to be mentally competent and in control of your own actions, that you can go and start up front for Manchester United and represent your country at football, then I'm sorry, but if you commit a crime like that of Axel Rudakubana, then why can't you do a whole life term?
Absolutely, and none of us on this panel is actually arguing that he shouldn't face a whole life term. I'm just saying that we should give the judges the options which are denied. And I find it ridiculous. I mean, you showed that clip from our Justice Minister suggesting that it's the UN that is preventing us from being able to implement this in our own law. Nonsense.
But Starmer won't deviate from international law. Starmer thinks that international law is absolutely 100% supreme, which I think a lot of people in this country wish he didn't have that view, that he would prioritise whatever we think is best here.
He's waiting for Klaus Schwab to tell him what to do from Davos.
They probably already had a good conversation over a glass of champagne. No doubt.
Keep doing the job. Wasn't it under Cameron when we deviated from European law and they said the EU said prisoners must be able to get the vote, and Cameron said, nah, we're not giving prisoners the vote. Absolutely. We can decide when we don't want to follow the ECH or through, and it took us a lot of work to be able to do that. The very question that I've been saying is looking at what Trump has done, deciding that he's going to pull out of the Green Deal and pull out of the climate change and pull out of the World Health Authority. I've argued for a very long time that we start to look at these international agreements and we pull out of the UNHCR when it comes to immigration. Absolutely. We pull out of the ECHR when it comes down to the law. Change the circumstances because they're being abused. And if there is an argument that the UN is stopping us from having this,
then we pull out of that
But
too.
there isn't. I don't think in law the UN can stop this. I think this is an excuse.
Yeah.
And, I think it's just an excuse.
Do you think you should look at it, though? Do you think we should look at changing that law?
Yes.
Yeah.
Either he has to look at changing the law and saying 16-year-olds from now on who commit these kind of crimes can be put in jail for the rest of their life, or he has to look at the law and say 16-year-olds are no longer classed as adults.
Yeah.
Until you're 18 years old, you can't work and you can't get taxed. You can't have it both ways.
Well, look, later on in the show,
Absolutely.
I'm going to be talking to top cop Peter Blexley about what we think Axel Rudakubana's life is going to be like behind bars.
Hell.
And, yes, to say the least, I would have thought. But just quickly on this, there's a report that's come out in the last few hours by the BBC. It was retweeted and quoted by our fellow presenter here, Tom Harwood. And the quote is this: the BBC has established that Axel Rudakubana's parents did not alert local police to the fact that the teenager attempted to travel to his former school a week before the Southport attack, where prosecutors now believe he intended to carry out a mass killing. Now, that is, according to BBC, they are saying that they have established that. But I think that does raise serious questions, doesn't it? About the role of the parents in all this. And again, I don't want to get into territory, certainly not where I'm defaming the parents. I don't know what their lives was like with that monster behind the scenes. But if that is the case, as the BBC are reporting, then that does raise serious questions.
It does. And I'm going to say two things. I'm part of a parent group that deals with children who have got serious ADHD and other issues on them, and I see the pressure that some of these parents have, particularly one I'm thinking of whose child is well over 6 foot and she's small. It's very, very difficult. But in circumstances like this, let's look at the law without casting aspersions on this. There is an opportunity for the CPS to consider aiding and abetting in various circumstances, depending on the evidence. So there is an option for them to do so, but let's also bear in mind that we do know children who are very abusive to their parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And put their parents in fear. I'm not saying that's the circumstance. But
this kid was known to our terrorism services and reported to them 3 times. And that was under Priti Patel. So it's fine for the Tories now to say to Starmer, you're not doing enough. Under the Tories, they did nothing about him.
Absolutely.
Well, and also, obviously, as we know, he was referred to the authorities on dozens of occasions. But if they couldn't do anything,
Exactly.
The parents had given up.
And it's these kind of conversations, exactly how we've just kind of landed there, which is that, well, the Tories have been in power 14 years, they didn't do anything. Labour have come in now, they've made a bit of a horlicks of it, to say the least. I think you see some of the other big breaking news that happened earlier today, which is that Reform now top a major national poll for the first time. And in my view, it's exactly because of these conversations. You can say what you like about Nigel Farage or any of those people, but they've got clean hands when it comes to actual things that happened in Britain.
But isn't this why we need a proper full investigation? Because it's those in authority, we keep saying it on this show, it's those in authority that are stopping things from happening.
All right, so I'm just going to reiterate, because apparently I have to, that supposedly Keir Starmer they've said that nothing's off the table when it comes to changing the law. Nothing is off the table. So we'll see, won't we?